Hey guys, I wanted to come to you quickly today to talk to you about some of the tweets that I've been doing, in particular dealing with ADOS hashtag, as well as what's going on in the Black community, the Revolt Summit. Some of you have seen my tweets and they have not been very nice. Um, Number one, the misogyny of the Revolt Summit was absolutely ridiculous. When we have young men who don't understand Moynihan and the impact of the Black community, and you can be jaded or um, prompted by someone like Candace Owens. I mean, we're really in dire need of someone who's a little bit better educated. You should have learned that in high school. And for those who didn't graduate high school, I'm not, putting anyone down. This life is not easy for anyone out there, but you need to know better than that. That's number one. Number two, the identification with ADOS during these so-called summits, or I should say, for those of you who don't know, ADOS means American Descendant of Slaves. Okay, it was a movement that was founded primarily by Yvette Carnell and someone who's called Tone Talks, who's on YouTube, and they basically, one is a lawyer, the other is an activist, I assume, by trade, and she used to work for Marion Barry. Okay, on the Hill is what her resume states. But these two people, and she went to Howard, okay, which is where I also went for a time. But when we're dealing with rational individuals, they will come up with logic that makes sense, okay? And so it makes sense to identify African Americans as different from other people during especially a very heavy immigration period. Number one. Number two, it makes sense to put something out there which basically protects African American civil rights. And this is what this whole movement really is truly about. And I'm a bit concerned because no one is stressing the civil rights violation. Okay. Instead, we're getting banter by people who are immature, uneducated, giving their 2 cents about something that's quite simple. So today I posted an article about the impact of immigration upon African American folks. Okay, the point of that article, which was very good, I mean that basically looked like one of the printers of textbooks. Could have been a textbook and maybe used at this time as a textbook to help explain what's going on here. But the problem I think we've had in academia as well is that when we oftentimes read things and we understand it in classroom and we go out to the real world, other people don't understand it, A, or B, it's ignored. Basically, you have a lot of knowledge that people already know, and it's being manipulated by people who either don't know, don't understand, or don't care. Therefore, you have the avenue opening, which is what we want to call a con artist type of area. Okay, and I'm not implying anything. I appreciate the work that ADOS has done, but I am concerned. Okay, when people don't know, you can be manipulated. When you're not educated, people can take advantage of you. You may stop with the ADOS movement, and this may be something to basically deter you from asking for reparations in the future if it's denied for this, you know, so-called movement, but I don't see it happening anywhere else except for on YouTube. Number one. Number two, you may become afraid if for whatever reason your voices aren't heard past Yvette Carnell. And her opinions are quite controversial with, as I've mentioned, you know, um, kind of going against Sankofa and Pan-Africanism, which a number of African American people were raised in, I being one of them. So when we go into separation of Black culture specifically, okay, not just from immigrants, but Black culture, we need to understand that there's a danger in that. There's a danger in separation and using divisive tactics to solve a real problem. Okay, we need to be separate in order to have identification for civil rights violations, to have special attention because we've been underserved as a community, we experienced slavery, we deserve reparations. That is clear. We need to have attention given, which no one right now in academia or anywhere else is doing. We need to be paying attention to how immigration is affecting African American communities negatively. You do have a negative net worth. I agree totally with Tone Talks when he says that. I actually tweeted that several years ago, so you may have looked at my timeline. I'm aware at the fact that many of the things that Yvette Carnell has said are either in the textbook or things that I've tweeted. Okay, that happens. It's supposed to happen as you translate knowledge. That's what you're supposed to do. If you're an activist, you're a teacher, you're supposed to have people interpret your work and use it. But you're not supposed to have people kind of give you half of this and half of that, and then add their opinion in it, which is, confusing at best to a lot of different people. It's not confusing to me because I can read a textbook, I can read an article, I can rely on what I've learned. I can tell people what I know, but it's only helpful if you understand right from wrong and you understand what's being told to you in manipulation, such as the misogyny at the Revolt Summit and the backing of it, which I posted an article in reference to, where P. Diddy, or whatever his name is now, is getting paid a great deal of money to manipulate you. You are being seen as, in this particular instance, a coon, or a group of goof-offs that they can put anything in front of you, from the Real Housewives of this or that to the summit. I mean, point blank, this man does not care as long as he gets paid. And he's getting paid big time off of you. And, I like to see the next one. Someone from our area, he has more obligation to us in Virginia, but Timberland is going to be up there. Maybe we might get some common sense, but I'm not trying to mess up his check. You know what I'm saying? As the young folks say, his bag. So I don't know. Hollywood is Hollywood, but activism is activism, if that makes sense, right? Kim Kardashian, excuse me, is not going to solve how immigration affects black folk. But I guarantee you, if she said something tomorrow, you run behind her when 200 million people have written scholarly papers about it before, this time. And it's important that you understand what's happening here. You're being ignored, except for when it's convenient and people can use you. And I'm concerned with ADOS about the $1 million donation to Simmons College, as I also tweeted about, where it was by a racist donor. I mean, if your husband is white and he's not a racist, I don't care. Your best friend is white, he's not a racist, I don't care. I don't care what nationality he is. I don't care what color he is. Marry who you want. Love who you love. It's not my problem. I don't care. That's nobody's business but your own. And same as for me. If that happened with me, good, great, whatever. But my concern is you pay more attention to, if I said a person of a different color, that was someone's spouse gave $1 million to university, and oh God, her spouse is a different color. Can you believe that? And you gossip about that because you have internalized oppression more than what you care about this man who called people the N-word and then went and ran to a religious HBCU and gave $1 million to try to better himself. And I'm hearing to start a religious institution there. So that's another discussion altogether. Those of you who understand good Christian fellowship, you know what I'm saying, from A Raisin in the Sun. Yeah. Well, white liberalism basically interprets all religious entities to be white. And so you good with me? I'm not a bigot anymore. I gave you this money. We're both religious. We cool. Both believe in white Jesus. We're ready to go. Good to go. It's not good to go. And it's not all right. And that's disturbing me. And it disturbed me the first time I asked Yvette Carnell about this on Twitter. I don't often get responses, but I don't often ask for responses because I don't need your opinion. But as far as this particular situation, I was concerned because she is trying to lead somewhat a movement. But with this particular type of character that she's portraying, she could drop it tomorrow. And you just be stranded, What are we going to do now? Oh no, we'll never get reparations. My concern is you need to have leadership in the black community, and we are lacking leadership. It is a dire need for leadership. You need to stop being concerned about internalized issues and start dealing with the facts. You need to stop having uneducated individuals like P. Diddy and whomever else, whatever goon from whatever, enclave you didn't pick to be your representative, tell you about yourself. These people are lying to you. They're stealing from you. And it's disturbing to me. When, as I said, when you talk about income inequality in Tone Talks, and Yvette Carnell have highlighted this over and over and over again. And you will hear people laugh because they continue to highlight this. But the reason why, and I understand why, is because some people don't listen. They're absolutely correct. As I've said many times before on my Twitter feed, as I've, continued to say, it is true. Not only are you considered net worth wise lesser, but even to the point where when black women go to get positions, they're considered lesser for a position that they're overqualified for, or perhaps even qualified for, especially if she's a black woman. She has to compete with white women and, white men and other black men. It's difficult. You have to have 2 degrees for every 1 degree that a person of non-color has. That is very well known. And now you have to deal with immigration. People try to tell you that it's low skilled workers, but I'm here to tell you, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in California, I've lived, as I said, in Maryland when I was at Howard. Northern Virginia, those immigrants are not uneducated. And if you go into, excuse me, I have allergies and asthma, so you're going to hear a little bit of congestion here. But when you go into a business and, 1 month it's integrated with African Americans and even white folk and whoever else, and the next couple months down the line you go in there and it's all Hispanic and it's not something that's a low income position, you're going to start figuring it out. Of course, California, you would expect it. Florida, you would expect it. And it's true in those areas, and they have plenty of housing in most cases, not always. They have diversity in their cultures as well, just as we do, and income inequality and things that they deal with. But not everyone is a farmer, coming over the border looking for work. Those are myths in the Hispanic community. And I mean, we've had immigrants for years of every single culture, from Asia, from the Middle East, from Africa, and we've never experienced difficulties like we're experiencing right now. Anytime that I say something and I feel like it's necessary to indicate that there's an issue, because I really am probably the most docile person as far as this is concerned. I've grown up with immigrants. One of my girlfriends was biracial, with black and Filipino. We have a lot of Blasian folk. It's not, we grew up with that. That's not an issue. She was one of my best friends growing up, right? And I think it's disturbing that I would have to say she's now married and her husband is African American. It's disturbing to say, okay, don't forget about us. Don't objectify us. I'm not speaking to her, but to other people who may come over and not understand this. Okay, and that it is necessary financially. It's a necessary evil when you're dealing with neo-colonialism. And with Hispanic communities, we have a problem with prior colonialism. We cannot deny Columbus, or whatever his name was, the conquering of the Americas with Spanish colonialism. We cannot ignore European colonialism. We can't. It's there. It happened. It's still happening. We cannot ignore the process of whitening, which occurs in this country, which Yvette Carnell did try to go over with how the Irish became white, 20 million different book readings. I'll tell you in 10 minutes. Every immigrant culture that comes across that border, whether it be through water or through Mexico or wherever, if they have a closeness to whiteness and a closeness to whiteness, it is a social psychology fact, they will be able to integrate more easily into white cultures than black folk have. That is because of the closeness to whiteness. And they have, because of European cultures, a closer amount of Hispanic folk that are closer to whiteness. And their whole system of race is totally different. They don't even consider themselves an ethnicity, okay? So what we need to realize is take care of the census, take care of making sure people aren't further objectified in African American communities. It's common sense. Yes, reparations are deserved. Yes, but you can't drop an entire issue. My concern is the shakiness of this whole issue. And the invitations from people who are less educated, bringing all of their stupid opinions into a conversation that has nothing to do with reparations and not objectifying Black cultures. I should say African American cultures. Separating from Pan Africanism, separating from Sankofa, as we call it, where we come from. We're delving into territories which are basically just divisive. And that's what everyone says about this movement. My concern is not being defined correctly. And we're getting into a situation where it's just not going to be something that's going to be promoting the right issues until we deal with the facts. You can promote not wanting to have mass immigration without supporting Donald Trump or racism. You can support African American communities without being a bigot against any other immigrant community. It doesn't matter, it just happens to be Hispanic right now. But what does matter is the closeness of, as I said before, any community to Europeanness. The Italians were dark when they came here. They looked like dark Sicilians who were closer to my skin tone. Irish were dark when they got here, and people called them the N word. Okay, historically, look these things up in textbooks, and they will tell you this is what the child is trying to tell you. I agree with her trying to explain it to you, but she's treating you like children, little by little by little by little. This is a one course deal. It doesn't take much. Everyone integrates into whiteness. And if you take a look at the article I just posted regarding the impact of immigration upon African Americans, it is very long, but it's the best article I've seen to date. The best one. I think that the issues that are outlined here with emasculation of black men and, going back to 1970s when they first began losing their jobs, or even the 1940s when they went off to war and the black women were left alone, we're talking about issues that have been, historical. This is not something where it's just going to be, okay, here's a one-shot deal, single parenthood. Okay, this is about not only that, but the fact that I think that Hispanic communities capitalize on this because many of them are married because they're, as I said before, colonized within Hispanic colonialism. So whether they call themselves Latina or Hispanic, and you saw that bait and switch with Cardi B, where she was black and indigenous, and my face was like, that trigger. It's like Candace Owens. Like, did she say she was black and indigenous? So what the heck am I? And what the heck are the indigenous people here in those countries that are being burned out of the Amazon? Did you hear what I said? The chick said she was black and indigenous and she's Hispanic. That is a problem. You must understand. Just as she came in and said she's this, she's that, she'll say tomorrow that she's the only black thing and bring in 3,000 more people, and then you'll be basically a news program or something propagandized as being Hispanic. You'll slowly creep over to Black Hispanic, and then you won't have an African American identity. And I don't, necessarily think African American is the only identity. I do think that the diaspora is increasingly becoming less important, though. And I do think no matter what you call yourselves in a unified group, if you're not objectified by other groups and you remember the legacy of slavery in this country, the legacy of indigenous folk being, given very similar treatment, enslaved, beaten, burned, killed, then you're doing the right thing. I don't care what we call ourselves. If we're unified in the understanding that there will never be a day that we will forget the suffering that the people who built this country went through, then you're doing the correct thing. But if you're ignoring this and trying to do the popular thing, you're being conned. And I'm concerned about those who just like Donald Trump, they see a problem and they intervene. When you don't handle immigration, you're going to invite white supremacy. Because those of you who haven't dealt with white supremacy, I'm from the South, I'm from Virginia. They'll do it for you. Hello. Yeah, we've been through this before. Don't invite it. When that door is open, they're going to come right in. They see chaos. They're going to either create more chaos with their point of view, or they're going to try to correct it and still create lesser amounts of chaos. It's still going to be chaos. Because then you're going to have to deal with white supremacy and racism directly. And what I found is a lot of these people, the squad, and so forth. They have a certain sense of entitlement, and they've come from areas where people have given them this entitlement, and the Democrats as well. And I'm a little concerned again about the progressives and the way that they put them in office so quickly. It's like a talent search or something. That's ridiculous. Okay. I don't know if these people are shells or what. They're meant to deter people to stand up. They're going against whatever Donald Trump says, and they're not thinking because they're thinking about their own self interest, as we would as well. But I think African American people tend to stand up when there's you know, a really, really big threat to them, as anyone would. But we also are going to be open minded, and we're going to consider other cultures. Even if someone did come at us and we were the ones coming across the border, we'd still be thinking about, well, what about those African American people? I don't like fake solidarities. I don't like people that go in front of NAACP and just read something off of a sheet because this is a game for them. Because, oh, African Americans are old. And those of you who don't know, people in California, other countries, they believe that either we're incredibly naive, we're stupid, or we're going to be old and dying out soon. Okay, and it's a possibility with the next generation we could forget about Pan Africanism and any sort of attachment to history. It is important to remember 400 years. It's important to remember, because 400 years celebration was held in Hampton, where I'm from, at Hampton University in Virginia. So, yeah, I mean, it's a big part of our history. We believe in being educated and knowing. And again, Yvette Cornell, oh, well, you shouldn't be talking about this 400, you shouldn't be talking about ADOS. I get what she's trying to say, but you need to understand what I'm trying to say. You can talk about both within the context of maturity. Yes, we need to remember this 400-year anniversary, but we also need to remember that our reparations are due. I believe that now there's a split because she's purposely dividing ADOS into this big, monstrous misnomer where people are going to basically be dismissive of it, which is what they want. That's concerning me, along with the $1 million. I'm not going to lie. Excuse me. Ugh, allergies and asthma. Um, but yeah, you should be concerned as well. You should be questioning that. And I'm not normally the one to speak up, but I am so concerned about right now where the African American community sits, just education wise alone, and those who are educated being misled, and those who are going on with liberal banters in the same vein. Oh, well, forget that Cornell, dismiss her. She's not totally incorrect. You must start to examine the full picture. No one's going to say you're a bigot because you actually examine the facts. The fact is, you have to examine it all. How the African American community is consistently destructured to a certain extent every time there's another immigrant community. And some people say, well, let culture happen as it happens, and I do agree with that. But if culture is being disrupted, specifically by economic instability and by things that are happening to this kind of destabilize the culture, then you need to become aware, and also the understanding of neocolonialism and how colonialism happened and it may happen again. It's just as devastating as fascism. Neocolonialism is not to be played with. You want to be liberal, liberal, liberal all day long, let everyone in, not do any work, and everything's a bigot. You're not paying attention to the entire picture. You must pay attention. It's hard. Don't let somebody mislead you into a movement that fails purposely and then walk away with $1 million because that was her job to do so in the first place. I'm not calling her a con artist. I don't know her. I don't know Tone Talks. I think that what they're doing is supposed to be good work. And I want it to be good work. But in reality, we need some leadership here. And when I say leadership, I mean we need somebody who's not getting paid off by P. Diddy or some other entity that he's working for. We need somebody in Congress to stand up for us specifically and say, I want to understand how immigration is negatively affecting African American communities and look at the correct studies, because there are many, and universities, more than one, to do research regarding this issue. Okay, if we have to constantly sit down here and defend ourselves, and because of internalized depression, I'm sitting here constantly looking at negativity. blaming women, blaming black single parents, looking at various levels of education, trying to figure out whether ways against other people's levels of education, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not just talking about, okay, you finished high school. I'm talking about what type of college you went to. Was it as good as so and so's college? You can take your snobbery and do what you want with it. What the truth is African American, especially African American women, are better educated. They attend college more. They get more degrees. They get discriminated against more than just about any other race in business. And we always have to sit down here and get more than one degree versus, any other culture. If one person has one degree in one culture, we have to get two. And that includes white women as well. So it is a double edged sword, and we do recognize that. And I think that bickering amongst one another only makes the situation worse. I don't think that you can follow someone that you don't fully trust. And I don't think there should be one person. There should be more than one person speaking up. And by that, I mean me, but, more than one person than me, not Yvette Carnell, a Tone Talks. You should have someone educated enough to say, hey, you know, shouldn't we be saying something about how immigration affects African American communities instead of trying to be divisive? Hey, isn't that quite immature what happened at the Revolt Summit? And isn't it a negative blackface presentation of how African American people really are? Can't you just speak up? Because I'm going to tell you, if we don't, then we're going to be doomed. Radical liberalism and all of this ideology that's being put forth to you, if, for those of you who don't know, by the squad and everything, that was done by black feminists. And I've talked about that many times before as well. And it's important for you to understand when someone uses your ideology in front of you and they're kind of using it for their own agenda, that's racist. And then they don't include you. So it's just kind of like, that's even more racist. Like, are you kidding me right now? But no, they're not. So when it's taught in schools and textbooks and things like that, the point is to be advantageous to everyone, not to be exploiting African American women. And we are notably quiet in this issue, other than Yvette Carnell. Okay, we want to be liberal, we are compassionate, we want to help everyone at the border. And, my Native American ancestors would greatly help if they could. But then we have to examine the issues here. What are the issues? This is not about just a failed immigration system. This is about a destabilization, not only in Latin and Central America, but around the world. And someone was talking about Africa the other day, and obviously I'm African American, so I'm going to think from my point of view. I was thinking about Latin and Central America, the dire situation here, which is urgent. And she's, most likely was thinking about the imperialism that happened in Africa and the way that they basically tore apart Africa, trying to get at the resources, which they are sincerely still doing. And the neocolonialism that's happening there, where people are coming back to Africa, and she's concerned about China. And I understand the sentiment towards some Chinese in Africa, so I won't get into that. But primarily, it's for us. I think it's the monetary value. People are concerned about China here, but I think that what is most concerning is the fact that we're not looking at the issues. The issue is you're not a racist because you want someone to get something done. You have to say you want it done. You have to say you don't want a bunch of rhetoric from people who are young and trying to use you to get to where they're going because they think that you'll be gone tomorrow. We'll just take their rhetoric in their textbook. We learned it in their schools, and we'll use it against them, and this is going to be hilarious. I'm not saying that's what happened with AOC and the rest of those clowns. I'm saying that's what it looks like. And I'm not saying that standing up for yourself and being radical is wrong. Not by any means, but if you're, again, just like Yvette Carnell, if you're joining one side, they're talking about immigration, 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 you're not talking about the full picture. If you're talking about reparations, 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 but you're not talking about immigration, you're not talking about divisiveness, there's a problem. And I know the sad part is I know many sociologists, including the one, there's a couple in Maryland, I can't remember their name. They're sociologists and they're referenced, and they participate in religious patriarchy, but they also do excellent work as far as writing papers that basically detail, the sociological fact that's attached to everyday issues, and they don't attach patriarchy to it. And I don't like the way as well the attachment of religious patriarchy, such as in Yvette Carnell and Simmons College, and that man being that good Christian fellow, being aligned with being okay and being not racist at that point. That guy who's at the summit saying misogynist things, supporting patriarchy, and basically just out and out violence towards women. And people have to understand that when those things happen, that is literal violence. That's just not perpetuated violence. Black men, that's violence. When you attack black women verbally, and you internalize all the things that white communities and white men have done to you, that's violence. So when those things happen and they're okay and he drops ADOS, we're in dangerous territory here. We're in danger. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, are you kidding me right now? What has happened in the past with these things, by the way, is generally capitalism has won. The white man at the top who's pulling the strings, leading P. Diddy around on a leash, is generally going to win. And he's going to end up shutting down ADOS and everything else because she's going to start to cave. I've already seen the attachment to that vulnerability in religious patriarchy. And those people tend to also be vulnerable in areas when we deal with any type of patriarchy. I said something about Fly New being queen, which I knew was partly capitalistic, but at least they were giving women some sort of outlet. But again, they always identified with problems with male masculinity as being normalized forms of violence. And I was like, okay, they internalized all types of sexism. Every channel I listened to, it's not just, it wasn't normal. You know what I mean? It wasn't something I thought was what a normal woman would say. Because when we're amongst ourselves and we're talking, we would just be like, girl, he was so sexist, I would never date him again. I would never get married to a man who treated me that way. I would never let some man disrespect me like that. And that's why so many black women are single, because we're headstrong. Not because we're stupid or uneducated. Those are myths. And again, we saw that perpetuated over and over again at that blackface spectacle. And I'm just sitting here like, the Revolt Summit, like, what is going on in this world today where someone actually can get on television and act just like a racist white person and call himself a black activist? Him, her, it, the other. You must start to understand. You could say you hate black people. You could say you hate Native American people. You say you can hate any ethnicity. But if you don't sit down here and say you're an African American activist, I probably don't care. Unless you're bothering me. But my concern is many people don't get it. When you internalize racism or sexism, you're doing exactly the opposite of what you should be doing. And it's going to backfire. If you ignore issues and you constantly try to, little by little by little by little, I'm just going to tell you in 10 minutes. Every immigrant culture just about has become white that has a closer connotation towards whiteness. That is a sociological fact. And my background is a sociology degree, a bachelor's, and then I have a master's in cultural psychology or psychology of culture, and then an MPH. So, I mean, as far as understanding all sides of it, I do. And the basis, I believe everyone should take a sociology course at least once in their life because it's just that important. It will tell you everything you need to know. It'll tell you about Moynihan. It'll tell you about male misogyny. It'll tell you, everything that are basics in life. And I know I applaud those children who are taking it in high school. They need it. My daughter's in college and she's taking it. So I think it should be mandatory. If you don't finish high school, they should have street teachers like they used to have back in the day. Not judgmental people about, insecurities they have as far as the way they look towards others. You need someone to lead you, to address the issues, to be upfront, and to not play around. If somebody's this way one day and that way the next, and your life is on the line, and you're talking about reparations, and you said, come on, reparations, please, please, please don't let her act this way right now. No, please don't let him act like a fool. I just want to have reparations only, and then you just sit up here like, mm-mm. And then, oh God, all we want could it please somebody please I want immigration because I just want to know what's going on with the gangs or my son got shot, but you're black and you can't say anything, or that you're a racist or something, like the girl with the women's movement. Her son was shot, and she had to. That's another subject I was talking about last week. The black women all left the women's movement, and the problem with the women's movement in the black community is misogyny has eroded the brains of African American women, and they've internalized it and think that everything that has to do with intersectionality is transgenderism or LGBTQI or something. That's not what it is. I've said again to Yvette Carnell and many other folk. It is an intersection of racism and sexism as it appeared to black women, a phrase coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. Very important. Also sociology. It is not the interlocking oppressions of all women. That is what she's referring to, intersectional feminism, which is also very important. But see how those things seem similar, but they're not. And so, oh, I know how that's going to go. All these women talking about weighing in into that. We ain't talking about. Come on. Mm-mm. You have got to do better than that. And then you're sitting here trying to resolve a problem by acting like you don't see things and not want to talk about it. I understand it could be confusing, and if you don't want to include feminism in your platforms, but if you're black women and you're supporting other black women, you have to talk about these things. And it's concerning to me that a black man owns that platform, and they are internalizing sexism. That's concerning to me. So I had something to say about that as well. If you think that the people that you see in front of you are your only choices, you're going to give up. And there's something in my mind. I have nothing against Dr. Boyce Watkins, but he's a capitalist, and that's what he's concerned about. He wants to make his coin. That's up, that's up to him. He owns Flight Newbie and Queen hashtag and the multiple, stations that are attached to it. However, it's you have a voice and you need to use it. Don't let someone else define you. There's another person out there. There's me. There's a number of different activists that are there to help you along. Don't think that someone else is there to shut you down. That's my concern. Because you're a very vulnerable population right now. You're always a vulnerable population, not just health wise, but also in everyday life. Violence is affecting you disproportionately, not only by the police, but also by immigration as well. As in addition to discriminatory practices which were already in place, which haven't been resolved. It just lowered you further and further down. As Yvette Carnell said, lower down the total pole to make you basically a permanent subculture, I think she's calling it. Yeah. If you understand it that way, great. You can be integrative into other cultures without being objectified. And I want you to understand that. You can speak about race issues without being a bigot. And we had this problem with Black Lives Matter, and I knew that they would because we would not name an organization Black Lives Matter. A liberalist would, because that's what they think Black folk are like. Oh, these don't matter. Black Lives Matter. They don't care anything about us because that kind of defeatist kind of attitude, that kind of always, that's how we are. No, it's not. A lot of times we are very proud of who we are, and we don't care what people think. We don't internalize it. Whenever you see something in the future, and I'm just going to say this as a final note, and someone internalizes what you think for you, it's always a dead giveaway. When people think for you what Black people are like, and they tell you what you are, it doesn't matter what it is. If they predefine you or try to guess at what Black folk are like, and then they do either the opposite or they pretend to be just like you to mock you, That not only is that arrogant, but you can always tell there's a flaw there and there's something wrong with that. You need to further investigate. Think for yourselves. Question things. Don't be afraid. Again, Black Lives Matter is another conflictive movement where you needed a voice. We needed a voice about police brutality, but did it do what it was supposed to do? And a lot of times people will ignore again the women's movement with, as I said before, at Sandy Locke or Kimberly Crenshaw. And she gave a very good TED talk for those of you who have seen it, and I might post it later, when she talks about intersectionality and how it has to do with these names. And she starts naming people, Eric Garner, and then she names the Black women, you know, that were killed by police as well. That's what her name was about, but they totally obliterated that hashtag and turned it into everything under the sun but what it was supposed to be. You're so busy trying to not think about, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about feminism. I just want to think about the easy stuff. I want to think about whatever men said. You have to think about what's right for you. Well, white men said this, a black man said that, so it must be right. Or they could both be wrong. Well, I don't want to be LGBTQI. I'm not LGBT. Well, neither am I. But when we're dealing with understanding differences, it's best to define something before we ignore it or try to avoid. So if you're not LGBTQI, then have a substantial understanding of how Black women are disproportionately affected by both immigration, by violence, by misogyny, by these things. And we typically call that Black feminism without necessarily going into LGBTQI or transgender issues, right? Womanism is a compassionate way, you know, coined by Alice Walker, for those of you who don't know, to discuss Black feminism in terms of understanding the overall picture, right? So we understand that feminism primarily is first and second wave. We say feminism only. That's white feminism, and we call it white feminism. Third wave feminism typically is Black feminism. Okay, and that's when we entered into the intersectional phase. And that's when all of this interlocking oppressions became so overwhelming that now we just can't talk about it. Now, see how we now dismiss that. Oh, can't talk about that. In 3 years, that's going to be hashtag ADUS. Oh, God, ADUS so complicated. And then Yvette Carnell got involved with this, and then this happened. And then, oh, God, and then they said she was a fraud because she took all that money. And then this rich guy did that. And what about she said this, and now she's hooked up with this misogynist guy, and they're doing all this, you know. And then you're like, no more ADOS. I don't care what the hashtag is. I don't care what you rename it. I don't care who the movement actually, you know, evolves into. I should say what it evolves into and who takes it there. This actually needs to be on a multiple platform type of agenda where you actually have people behind it, coalitions, because it's a serious issue. And it's not being taken seriously because we have people that are not serious who are kind of pushing it. We appreciate it. And we know you're serious about what you're saying, but are you being taken seriously? And sometimes people are not going to take you seriously because they're jealous of you. Trust me, I'm one to tell you that. I've experienced that my whole life, so that is not something new. But I mean, seriously, like, are you tantruming 1 minute, going into tangents? People say certain people can't focus, like Yvette Carnell. I think she's trying to stay focused, but I think that because she has limited knowledge and doesn't want to go into other issues, it's kind of difficult. You kind of got to talk about uh, Black women at least once and how it affects them. You can't just keep avoiding that. You kind of got to talk about immigration and how, specifically, right now we're dealing with a large amount of Hispanic immigration, how it impacts African American communities. You kind of got to stop going around, well, Kamala Harris, well, she's not completely African American. Well, you know, what about this one? Okay, we understand all types of immigration is affecting us negatively. Now what? Now what? And I want to see another person stand up besides me to indicate that we have an issue here. Houston, we have a problem. I am direly concerned that The only people standing up are people who are kind of giving one interpretation, and they're doing a good job as far as the income disparity. That is a number one issue for African American folk. But discriminatory issues that are leading to these issues, as far as hiring, as far as job performance, as far as even healthcare, you know, people get discriminated in African American communities far more than any other culture I've ever seen. Health disparity is far worse. If you go to the doctor, you are far more likely to die than even a Hispanic person. And you will see African American and Hispanic put together quite a bit because people just throw them together. People will tell you in Hispanic communities, they're not necessarily minorities where they come from because they're closer to a European epithet. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to get into it because they're defined differently because white supremacy and colonialism, whitewash literally, all of the other cultures that they eventually kind of evolved into. There are some Hispanic people that do understand this origin. They do keep to indigenous roots and teaching. I'm not in any way demonizing Hispanic cultures, but I do think there needs to be a re-education factor, and not just an unpacking of the knapsack sort of AOC uh, optic crap. I hate to say it like that, but yes, I understand my privilege. I understand that I'm a person that's an African American. Yes, okay, you can read a textbook too. Obviously, you've been to schools who have taught African American rhetoric, as well as Peggy McIntosh, who unpacked her knapsack and realized her white privilege. We get it, but what's the truth? So anyway, I'm leaving it at that. I don't have a lot of time to do a lot of vlogging, and then when I try to upload, I should do live. It just takes so darn long, and I have to take care of the kids. I am uh, mom first. I am family oriented. You better believe. Um, Still getting my daughter through college. She's almost there. Thank goodness she's in her last year, almost her last semester. If we get this paid for properly, because financial aid is what it is. That's why a lot of people are going for burning. And I mean, again, who's more affected by financial aid burdens, right? And then there's the value of the education, which I believe Yvette Carnell went into last night. Man, she's worried about Black women and worthless degrees. She needs to be worried about the devaluation of Black women and the discrimination against Black women when they go into the workplace, regardless of if they have a degree and the person who's applying for the job does not. Having to compete with both Black men and white women for the same position, and then having to, on top of that, exhibit, stellar performances in order to be able to compete in a community where they're probably already the head of household and taking care of that burden as well. And I sense some misogyny there. Nobody's asking for political correctness. Well, we are asking for truth. And I'm tired of the bull. These kids in the future are going to be lost. It's hard for African American women out here to put up with all of this abuse and to constantly be the ones to try to go out there and educate others. So, as I said before, I appreciate the Carnell and Tone Talks and even the Fly Nubian Queens. They try. They're more for entertainment, though, because they're about that coin that's capitalism. But I don't want you to think that all of the African American community is that, or whoever is able to get the spotlight, because you're going to give up. Don't give up on the African American community and understand the issues at hand. Don't think when you stand up for yourselves. And I think a lot of people know this. When they vote, they're gonna say it with their vote, but they're not gonna say it in public. And it's unfortunate because it needs to be said in both places. So again, I'm out of here. I gotta go pick my little autistic son up. He's not little anymore. He's 13. A handful. So yeah, I always try to make sure that I clarify what I say. I don't always have time to do it. I'm not going to get up here every single day. Maybe in the future, I was thinking about vlogging a lot more because it helps people understand that I have a voice and I'm not just someone sitting here typing. You need to understand this. I'm typing before I go to bed, typing right before I leave to go drive somewhere. I'm typing whenever I have a spare moment. So maybe I'll make a typo. Maybe, I'll try to make sure I get the file to make sure that it's synced properly. Like today, I was trying to make sure that PDF comes through clearly, but it's not always going to be perfect, but I'm going to do the best that I can. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. If you want to comment, go ahead. If you want to contact me on Twitter or comments, hey, go ahead. I've been attacked. It's not a big deal. I get a lot of people, though, believe it or not, that absolutely agree with me 100%. And I wish that more people would understand that. I get so many likes, so many people saying, hey, I agree, I get it. So maybe you should start paying attention. I think that once you start unifying as far as what you want to say, and you get out of the mode of, I'm doing this for me, I'm taking some monetary money from this person or that person, you know, this is my position, this is what I think, you're going to be much better off. That's all I'm saying. We all will be much better off. All right. Well, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.